Hey everybody, this is Scott Storch and welcome to my Owl Art Masterclass. This first chapter I'm going to be talking about how I got into music. I've been making music about 30 years now, and when I first started, my first connection to music, going all the way back, is I remember witnessing my uncle, who does religious music. He was on this piano we had at my house in my living room, and he started singing a song that he had written. And I remember in my mind, I might have been like 7 or 8 years old, and I was like critiquing things in my head and thinking, wow, this word should have rhymed for the next line and this and that. And then, ever from that moment, a spark, went off, and it was like everything was music. And I started, just trying to bang on the keys of this piece of furniture, piano that we had in the house.
We had an upright, like old piano in the house, and it was like a piece of furniture, and it was just something that I just was gravitated to.
And eventually, learning how to play and evolving into actually joining a little band where it was like a new edition cover band we called the Omni 5, where there was like 5 singers, and I like learned how to play all the new edition songs and accompanied them, and just tried to do anything I could to do, things in music. And, over time, I got better at my craft and, was really writing music and learning to play music at the same time, all on a piano. And I taught myself a lot of, I think important, techniques within songwriting and production, just playing on the piano.
I was like just a kid. I was like about 13 years old, and I had this friend of mine, a platonic friend at the time. She was this girl, Allison Matz, and her father told me he wanted me to play piano for his guests because he knew I played piano or whatever, and he was having a party. He was a really wealthy guy, and he gave me $100 after I played this song. I played like Bruce Hornsby or something, the song that Tupac sampled. It was amazing, man. I got my first $100 and I was like, wow, I could probably do this for a living.
Flash forward to the time now I'm at like 15 years old. I moved from growing up in South Florida to Philadelphia, PA, and I quit school to pursue a career in music very early, just at the beginning of high school.
I left my school every day, and I would cut class and go to the city in Philly, and versus I was in the suburbs.
Whatever road I took, I wanted music to be part of it. If it meant being a poor musician, I would rather be that than be a rich lawyer or a rich doctor.
I was in 9th grade. It was just starting, and I met this dude, Richard Nichols, who's an aspiring music manager. And he kind of took me under his wing, and he's like, one day he was just like, there's this group. They weren't called the Roots then, it was called the Square Roots. And they were just getting started, and they were developing their band, and they needed a keyboard player. So I came in, and I went to this audition, and I brought with me my Fender Rhodes, which at the time nobody wanted a Fender Rhodes. You couldn't give them away. It's an amazing sounding warm instrument. I had one because it was the only keyboard I could find for $200. And it just was like this perfect fit where everybody else had a DX7 or whatever, Korg keyboard was out. I had this thing. They loved it and the sound of it, and it just fit with this, what evolved into being this incredible jazz trio, hip hop jazz trio. Hub, Leonard Nelson Hubbard, myself, and Questlove.
And I did that for several years, and it was incredible to learn all the things that come along with being in a band. A band is like a marriage, and you have to do a lot of stuff with your band members and spend a lot of time, and it's definitely not easy, and but I learned a lot along the way. At one point, I decided that I wanted to take a different road, and I didn't want to be in a band. I wanted to be in the studio.
It was just so many times I heard people referring to me as the white guy who plays keys in the Roots. It could have been just the guy who's playing keys in the Roots. Like, I didn't want to be remembered as the guy who played keys in the Roots. I wanted to be Scott Storch, the producer, and build a whole, repertoire of music.
And focus my energy creating tracks and not touring and all the things that go along with being a band member. But I still maintain my relationship with the Roots. And for the following album, after I departed from the group, I met with Amir Questlove, and he listened to some stuff I was working on with Jill Scott, who is an artist that I was working on in Philly. And he took what I was working on and he put it on the Things Fall Apart album, and it ended up becoming a Grammy Award-winning hit, You Got Me, that Jill and I composed. And now I was not just a guy in the band, I'm now an outside producer being hired to produce a record for the Roots. And that was also another moment of growth for me in my career. And, definitely another landmark moment for me. So one specific memory that stands out to me that was such an amazing experience, being in a band and being with the Roots, was actually being called as a guest artist, music artist on the David Letterman show. And it was my first time on television. And, that was really a landmark in my career. And I had felt like I was really onto something and I was really doing something great.
Our next guests are from Philadelphia, and their brand new CD right here is titled Things Fall Apart. Please welcome, with special guest Erykah Badu, The Roots.
So short after my departure from the Roots, I met a guy named Derek Jackson, and he became my manager for many years. And he would take me on trips to New York to go solicit my music at and we would go around from label to label playing stuff. And I was lucky enough to get a meeting with Busta Rhymes, and he ended up becoming my first outside client ever as a producer. And we made a song called Bladau on his Anarchy album. And short after that, Capone and Noriega. And, then I just started getting into that producer groove and, familiarizing myself with the different A&Rs and labels and establishing relationships and becoming a member of the, list of producers that labels would look to get beats from.
If you look at the evolution of me and my career, I always have to take a step backwards to take a step forwards. Like, I quit the Roots to become a producer.
I think three of my biggest accomplishments in the music industry in the 30 years I've been working, one was being able to become part of Dr. Dre's, production team. And, that to me is like production on the highest level I think ever done.
Dre let me know it was special because he heard me playing the riff over one of his drum patterns while, he was like having lunch, and he put his head in, he was like, "That's crazy." And it was a wrap. By the end of the day, the track went off to Jay-Z to get written to, and so history. Man, it was incredible. It was such a privilege to be in the studio through the making of that album. I mean, to be a kid and then all of a sudden you're hanging out with Snoop Dogg and chilling and all these talented people are surrounding you, and just everything, like the learning and just absorbing it all, like how to make an album, not just a collection of a bunch of songs from a bunch of different producers and this and that. It was an album, it was an experience, it had skits, it was, Dr. Dre is he's a genius with that. He knows how to not only make the albums, he knows how to pick the talent, he knows how to create the records, and just being around all that was a crash course. It was like college for me. I realized, this is his empire, this is his aftermath. I need to make the first thing for Scott Storch. This guy's already had amazing, Death Row, and then he built Aftermath. I didn't build anything. I had to go build my name.
And to be part of that, you know, is an honor, it's an accomplishment, and it was life-changing for me. And then flashing forward to, I believe it was 2005.
Moved to Florida, back home to where I was originally from, and I created a name for myself in like this new sound. I didn't compete and try and make a bunch of West Coast records. It was this, you know, symphonic, orchestral sounding, piano and string driven thing. Then I moved to Florida, and, you know, the music is kind of, you know, what comes out of us is like what we're feeling or what we're going through. And, you know, here I am, I'm now in Miami, pretty successful at this point already, just through my work that I did with Dre. And I'm finally like going into the clubs and seeing what's happening, and you know, Miami at that time was a really sexy city. So that's what happened. The music started sounding like super sexy and exotic, and it was all pouring out into my music. I have always tried to be a pioneer, and I tried to go against whatever else is out. Not go against it, but just not do that. Like, do what I'm gonna do and what I like. And I trusted my taste in music, and what I liked at that time was like merging into this Middle Eastern thing. When I was with the Roots, I gravitated towards things that I liked as well. Like, I was a Tribe Called Quest fan, and whatever they were sampling, you know. So with this, you know, I was just feeling that. You know, I was listening to a lot of Middle Eastern music, you know, Amir Diab and all this like cool stuff, and I just went there. You know, I changed it up, and you know, I expanded on what I did again. So I took another step backwards, hoping that, like, everybody was like, "You're leaving Dr. Dre in fire right now."
I accomplished so much. I did like 81 singles that year. I literally just did nothing but work. I worked day in, day out. I did the work of 10 men, and I was able to achieve so many hits that year. I had the #1 and the #2 song in the country at the same time, in 2 different genres, and then they flip-flop, and #1 became #2, and #2 became #1. That year I had one of the longest running songs at #1 in history of music, which was Mario's Let Me Love You. One of my other biggest accomplishments was seeing a new artist become a superstar and delivering that artist his first single, and that was Chris Brown with Run It. And that was such a great accomplishment for me, because, you know, I had never done that before, and I felt like I was part of one of the greatest of all time music career starting.
When, you know, Beyonce and I got into the studio, we did 3 incredible songs that all became singles and were in the top 10. I think 2 of them were #1s, and it was an incredible run.
The first person I worked with was Scott Storch, and when I first met Scott, we just clicked. He was just a very humble person, and I was already a fan of his production, but I was looking for people that I vibe with well, and our personalities worked well, so we could make great music. And that's what happened. His beats were really different, didn't sound like anything else, and I wrote with him in ES. We did Naughty Girl first.
Huge star coming from Destiny's Child, but it was like on me, it was a little pressure, because it was like, okay, she's doing her first album, this thing has to be incredible. But, you know, I think days prior to the studio, I was like, oh my God, what's gonna happen? Because we created all this stuff live in the studio, and all that intricate production, it takes a long time to make records sound like that. You know, it's not samples. There's breakdowns, interludes, string sections, cellos, you know, there's you know, Middle Eastern flutes and layers of stuff to make it a real production. She was patient. We made some incredible stuff.
With this masterclass, I really want to uplift and inspire producers and musicians, and give them some tips and inside stuff that, you know, maybe can help them blossom into having an amazing career. You know, it's not all about the success. There's a lot of hard work that goes in. You can't get discouraged. There's a lot of people that will tell you no, and there's a lot of people that will hate on your music, out of jealousy, and you deal with all kinds of stuff. But you just cannot get discouraged. You just have to keep going, be persistent, and remember the squeaky wheel always gets oiled.